All right, thanks again everyone for joining our part of our X Factor series. Today we're talking about global network aggregation and custom deployments, network deployments. And today I have myself, Seema Chiodo. I'm the National Channel Director for Mosaic NetworX, and also Matt Hiles, our COO and one of the founders of our company. Comes with a long-standing history in the industry, and is going to be telling you all about the great things here at Mosaic in the network aggregation space and what we've done with custom deployments, something that isn't widely discussed sometimes in the channel community. We're going to give you sort of a bird's eye view into what we've done in the past with some of our other clients. With that, I'm going to go ahead and send it back over to Matt.
Thank you, Seema. Glad you highlighted the custom network deployment part of the webinar, because I think that's really a critical part. And I want to introduce Seema. She introduces me. Seema is our national channel manager. She is a world-class, nationally ranked channel manager. You can see her stats online anywhere. And I encourage you to reach out to Seema, and she can help you turn lost opportunity into revenue producing leads. So do reach out to her. So the intent today and the intent of all micro webinars is to give you sort of a grab and go environment where you can get some useful and usable information and then carry on with the rest of your day. So let's get started with global network aggregation and custom networks. I'd like to start off with a little bit of an operational history about the company to give you a sense of where we've been and where we are today. We started the company in 2007 by 3 industry veterans. We started as a non-facility-based carrier, which is really what we'll be talking mostly about today as a global network aggregator. And we deployed circuits all over the world, as we continue to do. There was a pivot, as many of us know, in 2014 with the promise of SD-WAN hitting the marketplace, and Mosaic NetworX was an early adopter of that technology, and we settled on VeloCloud back in 2015 and then did our first customer deployment in 2016 and have since done countless SD-WAN as a service deployments throughout North America and internationally. And then most recently, we acquired MSSP, very successful MSSP based in the Bay Area with a deep customer list and a deep bench of personnel. And that enables us to launch our security practice and our professional services practice. And Seema will be telling you about our pro services X Factor webinar coming up next week. So we're going to be focused today on this part of our operational history, really where we started. It's in our DNA, is that carrier services side of the business. And so what we really want to talk about first, and there's 2 elements to this webinar, is the global net ag as well as the custom network solutions. So from a network aggregator perspective, we have an API-driven database, very powerful, has 15 million connected buildings in it. We're going to talk more about the details of that in a moment. And we've got several hundred carriers globally where we have very favorably negotiated wholesale buying agreements. We have knock-to-knock relations with these carriers, enable us to deploy virtually anywhere in a seamless fashion. We've got 10+ years of being focused in the channel. So we're very adept at working with trusted advisors and how to represent with you out in the marketplace. Big difference, and I think it's an important one. We talk about differentiators. The difference of working with an agile service provider versus a traditional carrier. There are so many ways that the experience for the trusted advisor is better and the experience to your client is better. So we cannot really overstate the the importance of working with an agile service provider over a traditional carrier. And ultimately, all of these add up to just being an easier engagement for you and your client. So I want to give a workflow here. This is a supply chain management. There's a whole ecosystem of personnel and people and information and workflows that are required in order to deliver, global network aggregation. And so down the left side here, we have all of these carriers and many more, of course. And then in between, we have all of these workflows and logistics that are required to deliver network out as a service, out the back end, and as a highly orchestrated single vendor solution. I mentioned the API-driven database. This is a really important part of designing an excellent network for the customer, a high-performance network. And so we have 15 million plus connected buildings in this database. It enables us to go through and determine availability, diversity, and lowest price at any given address. And then again, taking that and delivering it as a single vendor interface to the customer. If we look at it in beyond North America, I wanted to highlight an area where Mosaic has really cracked the code, and that's in Latin America. So we had a webinar recently, an X Factor webinar, just recently talking about the complexities and the solutions that Mosaic brings for a very unique part of the world, Latin America. And we've got some powerful advantages down there. What we've seen is that many agents will walk from business in Latin America because it's just too difficult, not only to get quotes, but to get ongoing support for both them and their customer. So again, I believe we've cracked the code in a very holistic way throughout Latin America. So definitely do not walk away from that business. The services in LATAM are higher per megabit pricing than you see in other parts of the world. So the deals are larger, which means the compensation is better. So come to us for best pricing and availability. This is what it looks like from a different perspective. Global carrier management really saves you and the client time. There's a reduced cost for that. There's greater efficiencies in resource management. It just doesn't make sense for your clients or for you, frankly, as a trusted advisor to be managing multiple carriers. Highly paid, highly skilled personnel should not manage global carriers. Another differentiator, and I don't think anybody else in the business talks about this, and so I'm proud to, Mosaic NetworX has the industry's only billing SLA. Now, we all talk about a single vendor or single invoice to your client. That's kind of a common thing within the network aggregation space. But having a billing SLA is the first that we've heard of this, and I don't think it exists anywhere else out there. So what it means to you and the client is, and if you've had a billing dispute with a carrier, raise your hand. And if you've had a long billing dispute, raise your hand. So what our SLA is, we will resolve every billing dispute or billing question, billing error on the next invoice. So there is no 12 months disputing with Verizon or any other traditional big carrier. We know because we fight these disputes ourselves, but we will resolve that dispute for you and for your client on the next bill. And that's a big deal. Put your hands down now. So let's shift from the sort of plain vanilla global aggregator stuff, because we know that a lot of companies do that out there. Again, I think Mosaic NetworX does that as good, if not better, than anyone else in the business. But let's talk about some other areas where, as a trusted advisor, I really think you can differentiate yourselves in front of your clients. And I'm going to share a couple of use cases here that will really help you envision how Mosaic can do things differently than just aggregating broadband cable services. This first use case is an existing customer for Mosaic, long-term customer. We've probably had them for over 10 years. Global computer company. They needed to interconnect 2 critical data centers, redundant data centers. So they had this DCI project. What had happened previously is that they had diverse connections, vendor diverse, but they weren't route diverse. And when I say route diverse, they were diverse, but they were in the same conduits. So when one got taken out, literally it was a different cable, but it went down with the other carrier's cable at the same time. And we see that kind of thing. So in this particular project, we had to demonstrate and verify diversity on both routes, both from a vendor and a route perspective, and provide latency numbers and the usual stuff. And so we deployed this in a verifiable way, a multi-vendor solution, and this has been a 10-plus year customer. And this is not, aggregating cable services type stuff. This is, custom network. Here's a global software company you might recognize. Again, they had a high-speed requirement from a data center to their headquarters, in fact, 2 data centers. They needed a couple of different solutions. They needed both lit and dark. Now, one of the things that you might not know about Mosaic NetworX is that we're a CLEC. And so we have operating authority in California and 19 other states. So we have the authority from the CPUC, or California Public Utilities Commission, to build network. And so in this case, we did that. And so we engineered and constructed a one-of-a-kind network for this global Fortune-level company. Here's another really cool use case. Here's a global short-term accommodation. What do you call these kind of companies? Well, we'll call them Airbnb in this case. But they had a couple of sites in downtown San Francisco. If you know anything about construction in the streets of downtown San Francisco, exceedingly difficult. We were literally the vendor of last resort. The customer could not get this done anywhere else, and they tried. And that's why we got the deal, because no one else could do it. And we did it. They needed a diverse conduit system in the streets of San Francisco, and you can see the illustrations here, and it's a little faint, but you can see it there. So we built in the ground, again, exceedingly complex and difficult. As soon as you take a conduit under a freeway, then Caltrans is involved and the city of San Francisco is involved. But again, we delivered this project, again, because we're a CLEC in California. It was a one-of-a-kind solution, and it was a 20-year IRU deal for the customer. And so, again, custom networks, you don't come across these kind of projects every day. But when you do, it's great to have a vendor in your back pocket that can deliver these things in a one-of-a-kind way. So as a wrap, want to just highlight the things we talked about today. We've got a great API-driven database with 15 million connected buildings in it, enabling us to give you, the trusted advisor, and your client, a single vendor experience. And it's a bulletproof customer experience as well. We're definitely known across the industry for that. And we've got a really broad, comprehensive portfolio of services, everything from coax to conduit builds, as we've seen today. And we can do this on a global basis, again, simplifying those international complexities like time zones and currencies, languages, all big deals for global companies, and do it on a single invoice with a single team. Seema, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for going through that. I just wanted to open it up for some Q&A. If any of our participants that are on the webinar today have any questions, feel free to put them in that Q&A box or the chat box there, and we can address them for you. The first question we have here, did I hear that right, that internationally you'll be able to have one contract for all services in all countries internationally and then continue to have one bill?
That's
Matt,
right.
Did you want to address that?
Yes, that's right. Part of being a global network aggregator is giving you and your client that single vendor experience. So the answer to that is yes.
Okay, great. And the next question we have here is in terms of your custom networks, are there any limitations in bringing you a customer in that space?
Well, of course, there's always limitations. And every one of those custom networks, those use cases we talked about today was very different. And you can see the variables that are in there, whether we're talking about Caltrans and where that construction might need to occur. So there are a ton of variables and that can translate into limitations. So we'd really want to get with you and your client to discuss what their requirements are and go through a discovery and a requirements process and find out what the best way to solve their problem is.
That's great. We'll just wait a couple minutes here to see if there are any more questions. While we're waiting here, I just wanted to talk about our upcoming webinar that we have coming up. It is going to be very similar to this and be 30 minutes, a quick 30 minutes to talk about our professional services. And this is an area that we feel that explores other opportunities, specifically in the channel. It will open somewhat of a Pandora's box, allowing customers and agents to be able to see other areas of their business that we can definitely help with. We have CCIE engineers on staff that can help lead the way in identifying areas that we can help the customer with some challenges within their network and other areas of their technology stack. So these are some of the topics that we'll be covering, looking to accommodate work from home workers, looking to have a Cisco certified engineer that can go in and look at some network issues that have been chronic within the company. And if your client or your prospective client is having continual trouble on their network, how we can come in there and help them solve that. So definitely please register for our next webinar. We'll definitely be able to help you, and you'll be able to learn some new areas there. We have seen that professional services always lead to bigger and greater managed services. Matt, while we were waiting, we received another question, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it. How quickly can you set up a 4G connection with SD-WAN while a customer has to wait for a traditional circuit to install, like 90 to 120 days, so they have something to use for connectivity?
Definitely. That's a common use case. It's one that we solve for pretty regularly. And that kind of thing usually takes a week or so to get if we're procuring the new cradle point, for example, we order that, get the SIM card and the data plan, install it, get it loaded into NetCloud Manager and shipped off to the client. So maybe a week or so, depending on the particular router availability.
All right, great. I think those are all the questions we had. Please join us on our next webinar. Look into your email for a registration link, and we look forward to seeing you here in a couple weeks. Thank you so much for joining. Bye now.